You know, most of us believe that truth, if hidden, must be hidden by someone else. We imagine shadowy figures, secret societies, and grand conspiracies sitting behind closed doors, deciding what we may or may not know. But, my friends, the most effective censorship of all doesn't happen in governments or religions. It happens in you, right here, between your ears. The human mind is the finest censor in existence. It edits, distorts, trims, and filters reality until it fits the story it already believes. It is rather like a film director who refuses to leave the cutting room, snipping away any frame that doesn't flatter the hero. And the hero, of course, is what we call me. Now this me, this precious, anxious, controlling little self, is terrified of anything that might reveal it as a fiction. So it hides the truth, not maliciously, but instinctively, the way your hand pulls back from fire. It is self-preservation, not evil. The ego cannot afford to see through its own disguise, because that would be the end of it. And so, with infinite cleverness, it invents distractions, philosophies, and even spiritual quests to keep itself entertained so long as it never actually has to disappear. Have you noticed that? He will sit quietly for a few moments, perhaps to meditate, to rest, to see what is real, and immediately the mind begins its censorship. This can't be it, it whispers. You must be missing something. It sends you chasing after some future moment where the truth will finally arrive, wrapped neatly in enlightenment paper. And all the while, the truth sits patiently where it always was, under your nose, in your breath, behind your eyes, waiting for you to stop editing reality. The ego's censorship is subtle. It doesn't shout. It smiles. It nods approvingly when you say you are seeking. It loves that word. For as long as you are seeking, you will never find. It prefers you busy building ladders to heaven, polishing halos, trying to improve yourself into something divine. The joke, of course, is that the divine was never missing. But the ego would rather be a seeker than vanish as the found. And so we go on protecting ourselves from what would free us. We censor silence with noise, simplicity with complication, awareness with thought. We build walls around our own mind and then complain that life feels small, yet no one built those walls but us. You see, truth doesn't hide. We hide from truth. The Buddha once said, "There is no one to be enlightened." But the ego hears that and says, "Ah, yes, that's deep. Now how do I achieve that?" You see the trick? The self that wants liberation is the very thing from which you must be liberated. That's the hidden censorship, the jailer disguised as the prisoner. But you cannot fight this censor. You cannot argue it into silence, because the one who argues is the censor. You can only see it for what it is. A frightened child pretending to be king, a mask that forgot it was worn. The moment you see it, not as an enemy but as a game, the whole structure begins to tremble. And beneath it, something vast and quiet begins to shine, the simple, boundless awareness that was never asleep, never seeking, never in danger. So if you find yourself searching for hidden truths, ask first, what part of you doesn't want to know? What belief would crumble if you saw clearly? For the truth, my friends, is not hidden by the world. It's hidden by the one who insists on being right about the world. And that, you see, is the beginning of waking up the recognition that the greatest censorship is not outside, but within. The ego bans the truth, not by force, but by fascination, distracting you endlessly with the mirror of me. Yet when the mirror cracks, when even for a moment you stop protecting the image, what remains is not loss, it's liberation. The truth was never suppressed by power or dogma or law. It was only hidden by the smallest of all prisons, the idea that you are someone separate from it. Now you may ask, if the truth is so simple, so near, so completely obvious, why on earth should it be hidden at all? Why all the riddles, the secrecy, the veils? Why not just announce it on every street corner and be done with it? Well, you see, the problem is not that the truth isn't available, it's that it's too available. It's so utterly everywhere that the mind, in its hunger for drama, overlooks it entirely. The truth must be hidden precisely because it is so plain. You don't notice the air you breathe until it's gone. You don't see the space in a room because you're so enchanted by the furniture. And you don't notice your own consciousness because you are too busy being conscious of something. The truth hides itself by being too close, too intimate, too constant. It's the background of everything you call me and the world. And so, the ancient teachers, the mystics, the poets, they all knew this. They hid the truth, not to hoard it, but to protect it. Because if it's given too directly, the ego will seize it like a trophy, polish it, and mount it on the wall of my understanding. And in doing so, it will miss it entirely. You can't own the truth, you can only be it. But the ego doesn't want to be anything. It wants to possess. It wants enlightenment, the way a collector wants rare coins. So the wise ones, out of compassion, disguise the obvious. They speak in riddles and metaphors, so that your mind cannot grab hold too easily. The truth must be discovered, not delivered. It's rather like love, you see. You can't fall in love because someone tells you to. It has to happen of its own accord. You can describe love endlessly, its chemistry, its poetry, its symptoms, but until it blooms in your chest, the words are empty. So too with awakening. You can read about it, believe in it, argue for or against it, but until the veil falls, it remains a rumor. The truth is hidden so that you must see it yourself. It's hidden so that you may stumble, doubt, struggle, and finally laugh, because when you find it, you'll realize it was never hidden at all. The hiding was part of the game. Think of children playing hide and seek. The fun is in the hiding, not the finding. The universe plays exactly that game. It hides as you. It pretends to forget itself so that it may experience the exquisite joy of remembering. For what is the point of knowing you are God if you've never known what it's like to forget? So the truth hides not as punishment, but as play. The veil exists not to torment you, but to make the revelation possible. The divine forgets itself deliberately, the way an actor loses himself in a role, just to taste the sweetness of rediscovery. And when the moment comes when you suddenly glimpse through the illusion of separateness, you understand why it had to be that way. You see that even your confusion, your longing, your endless questions were part of the dance. The hiding was the revealing, the forgetting was the remembering. So don't be in too much of a hurry to tear the veil away. You might discover there was never a veil at all, only your fascination with the curtain. The truth has never been locked up in mountains or scriptures. It's humming quietly in the ordinary, in laughter, in tea, in the sound of rain against the window. It was hidden in plain sight because that's the only place you'd never think to look. And when you finally do, you'll find that the hider and the seeker were never two. The ego, you see, is a marvelous invention, a cosmic trick, really. It's the mask consciousness wears to play the game of being someone. And like all good masks, it fits so snugly that we forget it's there. We take the actor to be the character, the wave to be the ocean in miniature. Now, the curious thing about the ego is that it's terrified of vanishing, because vanishing would mean the end of its story. So it plays a very clever game, the game of survival through separation. It defines itself by contrast. Me versus you, inside versus outside, life versus death, sacred versus profane. The ego cannot exist without duality, for duality is the stage on which it performs its act. The moment it senses unity, it panics, For unity means no boundaries, and no boundaries mean no me. So it quickly draws another line, another wall, another distinction, just to feel safe again. It's like a spider endlessly spinning its web, delicate, fragile, and always busy. But here's the exquisite irony. In its desperate attempt to survive, the ego misses the point of life entirely. Life itself is not fighting for survival. Life is survival. It survives by transforming, by dying into new forms, by letting go. The leaf falls, the soil nourishes, the flower blooms. Nothing clings, yet everything continues. But the ego, frightened of impermanence, grabs hold of everything it touches. It clings to youth, to identity, to beliefs, to achievements, as if to say, please, don't let me dissolve. And in that clinging, it suffers, because the more tightly you hold on, the more you feel everything slipping through your fingers. The ego is like a man trying to capture the ocean with a bucket, exhausting himself, and calling it purpose. Now, don't misunderstand me. The ego is not evil. It's part of the play. You couldn't have a world without it. Without the illusion of separateness, there would be no experience at all. It's only when we take the illusion seriously that we get into trouble. Imagine watching a play in a theater. You know it's fiction, and precisely because you know it, you can cry, laugh, and feel the story deeply. But if you forget you're watching a play, if you think you really are the character in danger, then every scene becomes a threat. That's how the ego lives, perpetually in danger from a world that is only pretending to be dangerous. The great teachers have said again and again, suffering comes from mistaken identity. You think you are the mask, when in fact you are the face behind it, the consciousness watching the whole show unfold. But the ego's game is to keep you too fascinated with the mask to ever question who's wearing it. And so it distracts you with ambition, fear, morality, even spirituality. Yes, even spirituality becomes part of the ego's arsenal. I will become enlightened, it says. I will transcend the self. Do you see the trick? The ego's greatest disguise is the seeker of truth. It will chase enlightenment forever, because chasing keeps it alive. You cannot defeat it by struggle, because the very struggle is its nourishment. You can only see it, and seeing it clearly is the beginning of freedom. When you catch the ego in the act, in the subtle movement of comparison, in the need to be right, in the craving for validation, it begins to laugh at itself. And laughter, you see, is the sound of illusion dissolving. When you laugh at the ego, not mockingly but kindly, its grip loosens, because laughter belongs to life, not to fear. And the moment you stop fighting your own reflection, the mirror becomes transparent. You see through it, and what looks back is not someone at all, but everything. So the ego plays its survival game, but you, the real you, were never in danger. You are the stage, the actor, and the audience all at once. The mask dances for a while, and then falls away. But what it was hiding was never hidden. It was only pretending to be lost, so that you might enjoy the thrill of being found. And once you see that, you can let the game go on joyfully, playfully, without fear, because you know that the player was never separate from the play. Now you may have noticed something peculiar about those who've glimpsed the truth. They speak in riddles. They contradict themselves. They seem to answer questions with more questions. And we wonder, why don't they just say what they mean? Why not tell us plainly what enlightenment is, where to find it, and how to keep it polished on the mantelpiece? Because, you see, the moment they say it plainly, you will misunderstand. Not because you are stupid, far from it, but because the truth cannot be captured by words. Words are signs, not the thing itself. To mistake the word for the truth is to mistake the menu for the meal. The Buddha pointed to the moon, but warned, Don't confuse my finger with the moon. And what did humanity do? We built temples around the finger. We worshipped the pointing hand and forgot to look up. That's the tragicomedy of human spirituality. We keep mistaking the symbols for the source. You see, real teaching is not about transferring information. It is about provoking transformation. A true teacher doesn't give you knowledge. He gives you an experience that makes knowledge unnecessary. That is why their words are so full of paradox. They are designed to short-circuit the rational mind, to frustrate it until it finally gives up, and in that surrender, you see directly. The Zen masters understood this perfectly. A student would come, bow solemnly, and say, "Master, what is enlightenment?" And the master would reply, "Have some tea." The poor student, of course, would be utterly baffled. He came for philosophy and received hospitality. But the master wasn't avoiding the question, he was answering it directly. For enlightenment is not something apart from the simple act of pouring tea, of being fully here, of recognizing the sacred in the ordinary. The paradox of teaching is that the teacher's task is to make himself unnecessary. He is a boat that carries you across the river, but if you cling to the boat once you reach the other shore, it becomes a burden. The Buddha taught for 40 years, and at the end he said, "I have not taught a single thing." That is not modesty. It is precision. Because what he offered was never a doctrine, it was a mirror. And the mirror has no content of its own. It simply shows you your own face. That is what all true teachers do. They reflect you back to yourself. But the ego, clever as ever, wants to turn the reflection into a religion, the method into a monument. So it carves the teacher's image into stone and misses the living presence. This is why the great masters often hide their wisdom in stories, jokes, and contradictions. They are not trying to confuse you, they are trying to free you from the addiction to conceptual certainty. They speak in riddles so that your mind exhausts itself trying to solve them, because the mind cannot stand not knowing. It would rather cling to a wrong answer than sit in silence. But silence, you see, is where the real answer waits. Not the silence of suppression, but the silence that hums beneath every sound, the stillness that holds the world together. The teacher leads you there not by explanation, but by paradox. He hands you a koan, a question that cannot be answered, so that the machinery of logic grinds to a halt. And when it does, in that brief stillness, you glimpse the truth directly. That is the paradox of teaching. To speak in order to reveal the uselessness of words, to guide so that you may see there is nowhere to go, to teach so that you realize nothing needs to be learned. So, the true teacher is a magician of mirrors. He distracts your attention with language only to show you what has always been behind it, the eternal, effortless awareness that listens right now. And when you see that, you understand why they all smile, why Lao Tzu laughed at his own words, why Jesus spoke in parables, why the Zen master pours tea without comment. They know the truth cannot be spoken, only pointed to. The finger and the moon, the map and the territory, these are the same joke, retold through centuries. And when at last you stop staring at the finger, you see the moonlight was on your face the whole time. When at last the veil begins to lift, when you glimpse, even for a moment, that all you took for solid and separate was only a grand, shimmering dance, it can be quite a shock. It's not the kind of revelation that flatters your spiritual ego. It's not, at last I have attained it. No, it's more like, oh my God, I've been fooling myself this whole time. The shock is gentle, but total. You realize that the person you thought you were, this bundle of memories, habits, opinions, anxieties, has never existed as anything independent. You've been a story, a character in a dream that consciousness has been telling itself. And this realization is not depressing, it's liberating. Because when you see through the illusion of separateness, you also see that there was never anything to protect. The prison door was never locked. You were the jailer, the prisoner, and the prison all along. Most people imagine awakening as a kind of cosmic fireworks display, trumpets, angels, halos, perhaps a voice saying, "You've made it." But no, it's far more ordinary and far more beautiful than that. It's simply seeing things as they are. A bird sings, a leaf falls, you breathe in and out. And there's no longer any you doing the breathing, only the miracle of breath happening. Everything continues exactly as before, but now everything glows from within. The world doesn't change, but the way you see it does. You recognize that everything, this cup, this chair, this hand, is consciousness taking shape for a little while. The same awareness that looks out of your eyes, looks out of every pair of eyes. The same energy that moves your hand, stirs the wind and lights the stars. And so you begin to laugh, because you realize you've been playing hide and seek with yourself, pretending to be lost, pretending to be small, pretending to need to find your way home. And now that you've found it, you see you never left. But the shock goes deeper still. You see that the very act of seeking enlightenment was part of the illusion. The moment you sought it, you assumed it was something missing, and that assumption kept it out of reach. You were like a man searching for his glasses while wearing them, or a fish looking for the ocean. To wake up is to see that the search was the dream. The moment you stop seeking, you find, because there's nothing to find. There's only what is the eternal now, which has never gone anywhere and never will. And yet, don't imagine that this realization will make you special. In fact, it makes you vanish, and that's its grace. You no longer feel the need to be extraordinary. You are perfectly content to be ordinary, because you see that the ordinary is extraordinary. Washing the dishes, feeling the warm water, watching the sunlight on soap bubbles, that is the cosmos expressing itself as you. But because the mind has lived so long in separation, it trembles at this discovery. Surely, it says this can't be all there is. It wants something bigger, more dramatic, more impressive. And so the mind misses the obvious that this is it. This moment, this awareness, this seeing, this is what the mystics were pointing to all along. The shock of awakening is not that you gain something new. It's that you lose everything that was never real. You lose the illusion of control, of ownership, of isolation. And what remains is indescribably simple, a peace that doesn't depend on circumstances, a joy that has no opposite. It's as if you've been holding your breath your whole life without realizing it, and suddenly you exhale. The relief is so profound, so total, that you laugh and cry at the same time, because you see that you were never bound. You were pretending to be a knot in the infinite fabric of being, and now you know you were the fabric all along. That is the shock of seeing through the illusion, not a discovery of something new, but a remembrance of something ancient. The truth was never hidden in the heavens. It was hidden in the most obvious place of all here. And the one who finally sees it is no one at all. It's a curious thing, isn't it? Everyone says they want the truth, but almost no one does. What they really want is reassurance, confirmation, that their story of the world is right, that their beliefs are safe, that their me will survive the revelation intact. But truth, my friends, does not offer reassurance. It offers release. And release feels, at first, like death. To see the truth is to watch your favorite illusion fade. And we are terribly fond of our illusions. We polish them, defend them, pass them down to our children. We call them principles, achievements, even spiritual paths. But if truth appeared and said, "My dear, none of this is real," most people would slam the door and call the police. You see, awakening is not an upgrade to the ego. It's the end of it. And the ego is no fool. It knows a threat when it hears one. So it builds temples around the idea of truth to keep truth at a safe distance. It turns religion into a kind of spiritual insurance policy. Believe properly, and you'll be saved later. Practice long enough, and you'll arrive somewhere else. Anything but right now. Anything but here. That is why so many seekers wander for lifetimes. The seeking itself protects the ego from finding. The ego loves the search because the search keeps it alive. If you suddenly stopped and realized you were already what you seek, what happens to the seeker? Poof, gone. And that, you see, is the real fear, not hell or punishment, but non-existence. So we pretend to want truth while quietly bargaining with it. We say, yes, I want to wake up, but please let me keep my preferences. Let me still be someone special who has woken up. But truth has no favorites. It shines on saint and sinner alike. It erases the lines we draw to feel important. And because it erases them, it terrifies us. For if there is no separate self, then there is no one to be better than, no one to blame, no one to save. All our moral and spiritual scorekeeping collapses into a single breath of astonishment. It was always just life. One life, playing every role. That is why truth is so often rejected. Not because it is ugly, but because it is too beautiful. It burns away everything that was never real, and we mistake that burning for loss. We don't see that the flame is love itself, freeing us from the frozen forms we call me. The ego will fight this with every trick it knows. It will quote scripture, invent methods, form committees, and publish books about how to surrender without really surrendering. It will turn the way home into a tourist industry, and all the while, the truth will be waiting patiently, smiling, because it knows you can't avoid yourself forever. So if you notice yourself resisting, afraid to look too closely, don't judge it, just see it. That fear is the ego trying to keep its job. And when you see it clearly, when you no longer believe it's propaganda, something within you relaxes. The war ends not in defeat, but in dissolving. Then you understand why the truth was hidden. Not because it was dangerous, but because you weren't ready to let yourself disappear into it. When the time comes, you'll welcome it like the sea welcoming the wave home. The wave never really left. It only imagined it did. And so, most people don't want the truth because they don't yet want to be free. Freedom sounds romantic until you realize it means freedom from the one you thought you were. But eventually, the strain of pretending to be separate becomes too heavy, and you set it down not through effort, but through exhaustion. Then, in that quiet surrender, the truth that was always waiting greets you like an old friend and says, well then, welcome home. When the truth dawns, something beautiful happens. You stop needing to explain it, not because you've become secretive, but because you realize words can no longer reach what you've seen. You begin to understand why the sages laughed instead of preached, why the Buddha smiled instead of argued, why Jesus spoke in parables and then fell silent before Pilate. It wasn't that they were withholding the truth. It was that they had discovered that truth and silence are the same thing. You see, real compassion is born from that silence. Not the sentimental sort that wants to fix everyone or make everything pleasant, but the deep compassion that arises when you see that there is no other to fix. When you see that every being, every pain, every confusion, every cruelty is a mask of the same consciousness pretending not to know itself. Your heart breaks open, not with sadness, but with understanding. It is then you realize everyone is exactly where they need to be in their dance of remembering. Even those who seem lost are playing their necessary part in the grand symphony of awakening. You no longer wish to convert them, because you see that even resistance, even blindness, is an aspect of the one exploring itself from yet another angle. So you become quiet, but not indifferent. You listen more, you judge less. You act when action arises naturally, but without the feverish need to save. You help but you do not interfere. You love without agenda, because love is no longer a choice you make. It's the way existence breathes through you. This compassion expresses itself not in grand gestures, but in the simplest of ways. A look that says, "I see you." A pause before you react. A smile that has no reason. You may still speak, but your words carry no urgency. They do not try to convince. They are invitations, not arguments. You begin to notice how much noise in this world is the sound of people trying to prove they exist. But you no longer need to shout, because you are no longer afraid of being forgotten. Silence has become your home, and from that home, everything you say or do becomes music. And this silence is not the absence of sound, it is the absence of resistance. It is the stillness that hums beneath every heartbeat, the openness that allows all things to appear and disappear freely. From that stillness, compassion flows as naturally as fragrance from a flower, not because the flower tries to be kind, but because it cannot help but be itself. You see, compassion is not a project. It is presence. It is what remains when you stop trying to make life conform to your desires. And when you meet others from that place, they feel something they can't quite name. They feel seen, understood, unthreatened, because your silence reflects back to them the peace they've been seeking everywhere else. This is why the awakened ones do not go about shouting their realization. They don't write manifestos or form armies. They walk quietly, smile often, and let their being do the talking. Their silence becomes a mirror in which others begin to recognize themselves. And that is the purest form of teaching. There is no doctrine, no demand, just presence. So, when you see suffering in the world, and you will remember this, compassion does not mean you must fix the dream. It means you see through it and love it anyway. You see the divine pretending to be broken, and you bow to the play. You act with kindness, not to change the illusion, but to honor it, because in honoring it, you awaken it gently, wordlessly, through the power of being itself. That is the compassion of silence, the love that does not need to speak, because it has nothing to prove. It is the quiet knowing that even when the world forgets, reality remembers. And that remembrance is enough. There comes a moment, after all the seeking, striving, and questioning, when you simply begin to live again, but this time, knowingly. You realize that awakening was never about escaping the world, but about inhabiting it completely. You live not as someone who possesses a secret, but as the secret itself, walking around disguised as a human being. When you see that the truth cannot be spoken, only embodied, you stop trying to be profound. You no longer carry the urge to convert or impress. You don't need to look spiritual, sound wise, or behave like a saint. You've stopped acting. You just are as ordinary and as miraculous as sunlight on a wall. This, you see, is the ultimate paradox. Enlightenment makes you perfectly ordinary. You laugh more, you make mistakes, you forget your keys, you spill the tea, but something has shifted, a kind of ease, a lightness, a sense that even the mistakes are part of the dance. You move through the world as someone who no longer fears tripping, because the ground itself has become your friend. To live as the secret is to live without hiding, but also without showing off. You are transparent to yourself. You play your role, parent, artist, teacher, fool, but you no longer mistake the role for the reality. You can take it seriously, but never literally. And because of that, life becomes play again. You see, most people live as though existence were a problem to be solved. But when you awaken, you realize it's a performance to be enjoyed. You stop asking, what does this mean? And start asking, how does this move? Because now, life feels like music. And the meaning of music is not in its conclusion, but in its melody. The secret that must be kept hidden is not a piece of information. It is a way of being. It's the quiet recognition that everything you were ever trying to reach is already expressing itself through your very existence. You don't have to make it happen, you only have to stop pretending it's not happening. So you live naturally, without calculation. When anger comes, you let it pass through like a storm, no shame, no story. When joy visits, you dance with it, but you don't chain it to your ankle. When sadness arrives, you offer it tea and listen to what it has to say. You stop dividing your experience into what should and shouldn't be and begin to see that everything belongs. And this belonging is freedom. Not the freedom of getting what you want, but the freedom of realizing you were never bound. You can still play all the games, earn a living, fall in love, make art, grow old, but now you play them knowingly. You play them as God, pretending to be a person. From the outside, you may look utterly normal, and that's the point. The truth doesn't need a costume. You don't have to retreat to a cave or wear a robe to live in grace. You can do it while cooking dinner, writing emails, or standing in line at the bank, because this moment, this ordinary moment, is the temple you were searching for. Living as the secret means living without resistance. It means saying yes to life as it unfolds, even when it arrives in unexpected shapes. You trust that whatever comes from the same source that breathes through you. You stop trying to steer the river and instead learn to float. And from that floating arises a subtle, unshakable joy. Not the giddy kind that comes and goes, but the quiet contentment of knowing that you and the river are not two. The current that carries you is the same current that moves the stars. So the awakened one walks through the marketplace, smiles at strangers, does their work, raises their children, tends their garden, and all the while they are keeping the greatest secret there is. Not by locking it away, but by living it. Not by preaching, but by being. And those who are ready will sense it. They will feel something not in your words, but in your presence. For presence is the language of truth, and it speaks fluently without ever opening its mouth. That is how the secret remains hidden in plain sight. It doesn't hide from the world. It hides as the world. And when you live as the secret, you become both its guardian and its expression, silent, luminous, completely at ease. You become like a flute through which existence sings its own song, effortless, spontaneous, unowned. And if someone were to ask you, "What is your teaching?" you might smile and say, "Listen, do you hear that? That's it." When all is finally seen, when every seeking and struggle and sermon has melted into silence, there arises not solemn awe, not even bliss, but laughter. Gentle, golden laughter. The kind that ripples out of your chest before you even know why. Because you've discovered the punchline to the oldest joke in existence. You were never not it. You've been running in circles, chasing your own tail, praying to yourself, arguing with yourself, and taking it all terribly seriously. You were the thief looking for the stolen treasure that was hidden in his own pocket. You were the dream character begging to wake up, not realizing that the dreamer and the dreamed were never separate. And when this is seen, truly seen, the whole universe seems to wink at you. The trees, the clouds, the people on the street, even the traffic lights, they all start laughing along because they've known the joke all along. You were the only one who forgot. The cosmic joke is that there is no one to save, no one to become, nothing to attain. You can't lose what you are. You can't find what was never lost. You can't become divine because you never stopped being divine. The whole grand drama of existence, from the birth of galaxies to the quarrels over breakfast, is God playing hide and seek with himself. The Buddha sitting under the tree, Jesus on the mount, the physicist peering into the atom, the artist staring at the canvas, all of them are the same consciousness, asking itself the same question: who am I? And every answer, whether shouted in a temple or whispered in despair, is the same voice echoing through eternity. The joke is not cruel. It's loving beyond measure. Because the moment you realize it, all your seriousness collapses. You stop trying to manage the cosmos. You stop carrying the unbearable burden of being the doer, the achiever, the sinner, the saint. You see that you were never holding up the sky was holding you. This laughter, this cosmic humor, is the laughter of freedom. It doesn't deny pain or tragedy. It embraces them as part of the comedy of divine forgetfulness. The tears of the world and its laughter are made of the same salt water and both return to the same sea. That's why, after enlightenment, the masters laugh and bow. They bow because they understand the enormity of the play, and they laugh because they were fooled by it for so long. They see how convincing it was, how beautifully designed, how utterly real it seemed, and they love it even more for that. It's as if the universe is saying, "Well done, you magnificent fool. You played your part perfectly." For that is what you are, the divine fool, wise enough to forget yourself so that you could rediscover yourself, brave enough to leap into form, into time, into limitation, all for the joy of waking up again. And the joke keeps going, you see. Even after awakening, life continues. Bills, traffic, heartbreak, laughter, breakfast, starlight. Only now you know the trick. You know that all of it is the one pretending to be many. You know that God didn't create the world as a project, He became it for the sheer delight of the masquerade. So when you laugh, truly laugh, you are laughing with God. Because in that laughter, all divisions dissolve. You are the punchline, laughing at itself. And perhaps that's the highest wisdom of all, to see that the universe was never meant to be understood like a machine, but enjoyed like a melody. To realize that the purpose of life is not to reach the end, but to dance the rhythm of it. When you see this, when you really see it, you find yourself free not above life, but right in the thick of it, yet utterly unbound. You can play, weep, work, love, lose, create, and destroy, all as expressions of the same cosmic laughter. For that laughter is existence itself, the endless play of being, pretending to be becoming. And if you listen closely, right now, beneath the hum of thought, beneath the heartbeat, beneath the wind, you can still hear it. The faint, eternal chuckle of the universe, realizing it's been looking for itself this whole time. And in that sound, you'll remember, you were never not in on the joke. And so, my friends, after all this wandering through the corridors of illusion, after every mask and mirror, we come to the simplest thing of all freedom, not the kind of freedom the ego dreams about, the freedom to do whatever you please, but the freedom from the very idea of needing to please anyone, including yourself. You see, the moment you stop trying to be free, you are. The moment you stop trying to awaken, you wake. The very effort to escape binds you, because effort always implies there's somewhere else to go, someone else to become. But there is no else. There's only this. It's like trying to relax. The more you try, the tenser you become. And only when you stop trying, when you sigh and give up, does relaxation happen on its own. That's how enlightenment works. It isn't achieved, it's noticed. And this noticing brings an extraordinary calm. You don't suddenly become invincible or immune to life's troubles. You still stub your toe, you still get hungry, you still forget where you put your glasses. But now, you no longer take it personally. You see that life doesn't happen to you, it happens as you. You and the world are not two things rubbing against each other. You are one movement, one gesture, one great breath. The freedom beyond trying is the discovery that there was never a separate you steering the ship. The river has always been flowing of its own accord. The current carries you whether you fight it or float. And when you stop fighting, You realize the river is you. This realization doesn't make you passive. On the contrary, it fills you with a kind of effortless vitality, because now your actions are not driven by fear or lack. They arise naturally, like waves rising from the sea. You act because acting is the nature of the moment, not because you're trying to get somewhere. And this makes life astonishingly alive. Everything glows again, the way it did when you were a child and hadn't yet learned to separate yourself from the wonder of the world. You see, the freedom beyond trying is really a return to the playfulness that was always there before you started taking yourself so seriously. When you stop needing to prove, you become profoundly creative. When you stop needing to arrive, you begin to dance. When you stop needing to understand, you begin to see. And when you stop needing to be spiritual, you realize that everything, every leaf, every laugh, every mistake has been sacred all along. This is the freedom the wise ones tried to point to. Not a liberation from life, but a liberation in life. Free to laugh, to cry, to be quiet, to be loud. Free to make a fool of yourself and enjoy it. Free to fail without being a failure. Free to die without being dead. Because when you see the game for what it is, you can finally play it wholeheartedly. You can give yourself completely to it, to your loves, your work, your joys, your sorrows, without clinging, without fear. For you know now that the one who plays and the one who is played are not two. And when the play is over, when the curtain falls, you don't dread it anymore. You bow deeply, with gratitude, knowing that what you are was never confined to the stage. The audience, the actor, and the play have always been one thing, the eternal consciousness pretending to forget, just to rediscover its own laughter. So the freedom beyond trying is not something to grasp, but something to relax into, like slipping into a warm bath after a long journey. It's the peace of knowing there's nothing left to fix, nothing left to chase, nothing left to hold. You've come home. And home was never somewhere else. It was the silence at the center of every sound, the stillness behind every motion, the awareness behind every thought. And if you listen closely, right now, you can hear it. Not as a sound, but as a presence, vast, quiet, perfectly content. That's it. That's the secret that can't be told, the truth that must be hidden, the awakening that was never asleep. And when you finally see it, you'll smile, perhaps even laugh, and pour yourself a cup of tea. Because, after all, this is it.